You're listening to Barbell Logic,
the podcast where we talk about what it means to experience strength
and how you can use simple, hard, and effective strategies in training and nutrition to improve your life.
It starts with meeting you where you are right now and finding lasting solutions.
Welcome to the show. You're listening to the Barbell Logic podcast. This is another episode of the Coaching Success Series. I'm your host, Matt Reynolds. Happy Friday. You might be able to hear it in my voice. My voice is not great. On the last podcast, funny story, talked about taking a Sabbath. I went down to the cabin and got a little work done and did some resting and watched a TV show and went to bed that night. And I have my old CPAP there, the one I've had for 20 years. And back in those days, just about all new CPAPs now, I actually have a travel CPAP and I have my nicer home one at my main house. So I don't have to travel back and forth with a big giant CPAP. I've just got the old CPAP down at the cabin because it works fine. But the old CPAPs, they don't auto-regulate. And so the new CPAPs, they can kind of feel how much air to push into your sinuses, into your nostrils. I use the nose pillows. And I did not put enough water in it and it ran out of water. So it basically heats up a water tank and then it's basically putting humidified air into your nose to keep, if you can be a nose breather and not a mouth breather. And it ran out of air and I woke up at like 1:45, 1:50 in the morning on Friday morning last week. And my nose was so irritated that I sneezed 500 or 600 times over the next several hours. I mean, like literally every 10 seconds or 20, it was miserable. Sneezed so much that my ribs got sore and I lost my voice, my throat. I just like this, of course, because I dad sneeze. Like I'm cause an earthquake with every sneeze. Well, I only did that 500 or 600 times. And so my sleep this week has been not great. So then the next couple nights I came back home. I couldn't sleep with a CPAP because my nose was so irritated. I was putting like Aquaphor, like a Vaseline type petroleum jelly type product in my nose to just kind of keep it just kind of down. Imagine having like the worst allergies ever is what it's like. I mean, it was so swollen, my eyes would water, but taking allergy medicine didn't really fix the problem because like maybe it would dry up, the tears and the mucus production and stuff. But it was just, man, it was a mess. Last week's been nuts. I'm in Virginia for a big Army fitness symposium. And so I'm recording this. I fly out here in a bit, but I'm still I've walked the edge all week long on just, trying to keep my like saline in my nose and then Aquaphor in my nose. And so I could not have recorded a podcast before the last day or two because I just didn't have a voice. And even now you can hear it's kind of deep and gravelly and whatnot. I can remember at church on Sunday trying to sing, and I try to sing loud because I think it's a good way to lead. I had to drop every song an octave and sing an octave lower than I normally could because it was just squeaky. I sound like a squeaky church mouse. So anyway, that's nothing to do with the podcast today, but that's how my week has gone. So I've been on the road 36 days out of the last 60 or 59 days, somewhere in there. And I'm in Charleston next week. That should be we'll do some fun stuff down there, have a event for the Forbes book. Get to go see my good buddy Cam Cox, who's been on the show, go have dinner with him and his sweet family and new baby. And then I'm going to be on a big podcast down there, a top 10 or so podcast. I won't say what yet, but they do in-studio podcasts. So that's coming. I'm going to take Rachel this time, which will make it a little nicer than just being a hermit in my hotel room, which is what I tend to be on these travel trips at this point. So I want to dive in today, when to hire out. And specifically focusing not on those of you who have businesses that are thinking about like, when do I hire more coaches or like highly skilled positions, maybe in your actual business, but actually how to hire out contractors or people to do the things that in the book we talk about that are urgent, but often not that important. When they're urgent, but not important, we automate or delegate those as best we can. And so I just want to give you some examples of how I've used that in my life, and I hope it will help you. And so first off, in the online sphere, I have an executive assistant. He is highly skilled and worth lots of money to be able, I mean, we should pay him well, and we do to do what he does. He does other stuff at the business as well that is well beyond that. And so the only reason I'm not saying his name is because I actually think at this point being an executive assistant is below him. But he does such a great job at that. Helps me keep my calendar, helps me set up my Zoom calls, all that kind of stuff. That's an online thing that I don't have to have somebody in person do. And then the other thing that I've done a ton of lately online, and this is just, I remember first reading about this when Tim Ferriss's first book, 4 Hour Work Week, came out, which of course nobody then actually worked 4 hours. But the point was that you can work smarter and more efficient, and you don't have to just, grind yourself to death working in the business instead of on the business. And so for online, I actually utilize Upwork and Fiverr, and I tend to use Upwork more, but they're basically similar. And there's other companies that do that. So I certainly don't have any affiliation there. And if I need something like I'm doing a quarterly report and I need a spreadsheet to look nice, or I need all the formulas to make sure that they line up. I'm Andrew Jackson, who's a spreadsheet master, will tell you that I am not, and that would be true. I know how to punch numbers into cells, but all those formulas and stuff I never really learned very well. And so I'll hire somebody to do that. I hired a guy to do, you heard the story about trying to buy the church, to do architectural renderings for the church. And when you hire somebody to do that, first off, you get a choice of, do you just want to hire it just in the US or worldwide? I almost always pick worldwide because they're cheaper and they do great work and they have great work ethic. I'll tell you the one downside of hiring somebody for whatever skill you need, if you hire worldwide, is they tend to almost be in the East. So India, Pakistan, Ukraine, Philippines, whatever. And the time zone is, they are like the opposite. They're 12 hours, 13 hours different. So you have a very short window of just a few hours a day that you can talk to each other or chat with each other about what you need. And then you get up the next morning and you've got work from them, but now they're asleep or whatever, or maybe that's the few hours that you have first thing in the morning, and you go back and forth, and then you do work and they're asleep because it's 2 a.m. their time, but it's very cheap. And so I've used them to do that. I hired a guy to do what's called typesetting and pagination for basically just making the book look nice. Forbes will do that in the end, but I need a clean version of the book that I can send out to friends and influencers, people that we know, people that you've heard of, to do testimonials and references on that book. I want them to actually just to read at least a good portion of it. And so while Forbes will lay out the book, the look of the book, put in the illustrations exactly where they're supposed to be, I needed something before that to be able to get what they call the front matter in, right? So the dedication and the acknowledgments and testimonials and all that sort of stuff. And so I hired somebody to do that, and they're cheap and they do a great job and they make it look nice, and they give you a PDF and they can put a watermark on it that says not for distribution, obviously, because this is something that will be published in a few months. And so I've hired that out, and it gives me an opportunity to send that out rather than just a manuscript and text. I think the illustrations are really important there. So shout out to illustrator Ted. I won't say his last name. I think he's a fairly private guy, but he's the guy that does all the illustrations for The Art of Manliness you've seen before. He's doing the illustrations in this book. He's done a fantastic job. I've worked with him in the past. And so that's another thing I've hired out. So as you think about, I remember sitting on a plane, gosh, it's probably been 6, 7, 8 years ago now. And I was sitting on a plane, and I was on the aisle on the left side, and the person on the aisle on the right side and one row in front of me was looking at a report for their business, and the report looked amazing. I don't know what it said. I couldn't read the text, but I could see the look of the thing, like the way it had been designed graphically and laid out. I was like, man, I wish Barbell Logic could get to the point that we could do that. Well, now we have a full in-house design team, and they're incredible. And so everything we put out, I'm just like, my gosh, this is so good. And so that's a high level skill. And those people are relatively expensive if you hire them in-house, because that's their full-time job and you have to pay them. For most of you listening, you just need that on occasion. And there are tons of people out there. It is so easy to set up an account on Upwork or Fiverr. It's like getting an Uber. And Then you lay out the basics of like, here's what I need. And I usually do a screen recording, like right on TKC, and switch to, whatever documents I need. I hired somebody to help with my church's website, and we went through some changes to our constitution and bylaws and stuff like that. And so to input those into the church website recently, and it's all super cheap. So think about, in the same way that when we talk about the E-Myth, that you hire things out at the lowest wage first, then that's where you start. And so for me, in the online sphere, that tends to be on something like Upwork or Fiverr. You find the people, you put the proposal together, they send you back, they're interested. You start getting pings almost immediately, at least if you do it and it's not in the middle of the night. In East Asia, if you do it in the morning, then you're good, and you can kind of look at them. They've got ratings, I think it's 100%, it's 97% satisfied, things like that. And they're $15 an hour or $8 an hour, or if it's more highly skilled, maybe it's $30 an hour, and it's only going to take a couple hours. And so the amount of work it saves you to pay somebody $50 or $60 or $100 or even $200 for a job is very much worth it. And so last part of the online side is like, that's what we've tried to do at TKC. And so remember that Turnkey Coach was never supposed to be something that we sent out into the ether, into the B2B, business to business marketplace. It was for us. Like, we looked at all the different softwares we were using, from a third-party programming software to Stripe for payment processing, to Calendly to set our calendars, to Slack and Discord to interact. And we continue to try to reduce the number of technologies that you would need to use as a coach to use Turnkey Coach. So that, again, our vision for Turnkey Coach is that Turnkey Coach is the technology that you use that fades into the background and does all the things you need it to do: payment processing, customer service, obviously programming, coaching, etc. But it fades in the background so that primarily it is the bridge to connect clients and coaches. If it feels clunky, if it feels like there's speed bumps, if there's hurdles, if there's whatever, then we have to shore those up. Turnkey Coach, I think, at least at the price from, $2-3 a client to $5 a client for all of the suite of services, which I think is $5 a client, is nothing to be able to get everything: payment processing and integrated screen recordings and all that sort of stuff. I think that's a great place to spend your money. And remember, like, you guys know, and I don't want to be arrogant here, but like, the company's a big company. So when somebody comes in and they've got 5 clients or 7 clients or 10 clients, multiply that by, our top price tier is $5. So you have 10 clients, you come in, it's $50 a month. In the grand scheme of things, like, what does that mean to the company? Like, financially, almost nothing. But what we're trying to do is change the perception of online coaching and help you figure out when it's time to delegate and automate things. And again, Andrew's done, and the dev team has done such a great job, like adding lean manufacturing to the service industry in fitness, which has never been done before, so that rather than having to run 20 different softwares and pay for 20 different softwares, you just pay for one. Or maybe right now you pay for 1, 2, or 3, but our goal is to eventually only pay for one. And you don't have to have scheduling apps, and you don't have to have whatever those other things are, right? So that we do all this stuff. It's the goal. This is the name of the company, is Turnkey Coach. It's turnkey. You get to coach, the clients get to interact with you. We do everything else. Okay, so then getting out of the online sphere is the in-person spheres, like what's going on in your home, what's going on in your land, like, whatever, things like that. I think there are great opportunities there as well. For those of you who have kids, certainly that are older than, say, 7 or 8, you should have a chore sheet for them and pay them an allowance based on work. Like, we've never paid our kids an allowance for just the sake of an allowance. And we don't pay our kids for things that are expected. We don't pay our kids for getting their homework done. We don't pay our kids for cleaning their bedrooms. Those are expected of us as humans. But we pay our kids for cleaning the kitchen. We pay our kids for pulling the weeds out of the mulch around the house. We pay our kids for, my older one, not the younger one, because she can't drive, for taking our cars to the gas station, filling up with gas, running through the car wash. going to the grocery store, buying the basics, things like that. Like those are great. I actually recently hired my oldest daughter's boyfriend, who's 17, great kid. And he comes to my house every day from 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. before they go to school, before they go to the college they're going to, and works for 1 hour a day. And he works through the mail. He separates my mail, like business mail, personal mail. These are bills that need to be paid, things like that. He makes sure that the house is in good order. The living room's generally clean. And there's usually an extra job on there, like something in the garage. Like my garage is covered in rubber floor mats because it's mostly a gym. And my wife's car tends to separate those floor mats. So he got some good like black gaff tape, and he put all the floor mats together and gaff taped them together. And, it's like, it'll be little things like that. We're like, I don't want to do that. And my time is more valuable than that. Not because I'm special, not because I'm not making the kid clean toilets. And you can certainly do that. And again, we have a housekeeper that comes every Monday. Put that in perspective. I realize sometimes you start to talk about things like a housekeeper and like, yeah, you're a CEO of a big company. Like she's like $100 for the day to come in on Mondays and do all of we keep a clean house, and she comes in and cleans all the wood floors, and she cleans the baseboards, and she cleans the toilets and the showers and the bathtubs, and gathers all the trash and does the stuff, like all the stuff that's just like, is easy to delegate or automate out. And so I want you to think about this week, like, what are the tasks you're doing? Just use your notes on your phone and just mark that, like, I'm spending a lot of time doing this thing, or this thing took me a lot of time, and my time is more valuable than that because I could have been coaching or doing whatever. And instead I was like going around and like, Swiffering the floors. You shouldn't be Swiffering the floors. You shouldn't be mowing your lawn. Like you hire out very early. You should be hiring out someone to mow your lawn. I still have control of the lawn. I still am sort of particular about the way my lawn looks. So I'll go on Lowe's.com, or I'll go on, we have a kind of a local hardware and seed type company, and I'll buy grass seed, and I'll buy pre-emergent weed killer and post-emergent weed killer and fertilizer and stuff like that. But like, I'm not putting that stuff down. I have all that stuff. That stuff's cheap. Again, the basic Scott's spreader is $50 or whatever. And you buy that one time, and then you hire some kid, or for me, it's my sister or my older daughter or my older daughter's boyfriend, and they do those things. And so think about where you can, again, coming back to the Eisenhower Matrix, that you can completely eliminate the non-urgent, non-important, but that you can delegate or automate. And again, Turnkey Coach is a great option there in the automation piece, both delegation and automation, because we want to leverage AI as much as we can to make things like programming easy for you, so that you get to spend the majority of your time actually talking to your clients, actually breaking down their videos, actually coaching, not spending time punching in numbers on a program. And so fun stuff coming down the pipeline there. And then at home, think about, if you're overwhelmed with your home is a place of chaos. There's always dirty dishes in the sink. You're mowing the lawn once every 2 weeks, and it's, May, and the lawn is growing and really needs to be mowed like every 4 days. Hire that out. That's fine. And then here's the deal. When the lawnmowers are there, you make sure you're working on something that's more valuable than mowing the lawn. That's the point, right? That's why we don't change our own oil anymore in our cars, because it costs $30 to go have your oil changed. I don't even drive it to the oil place. I send my 19-year-old and I pay her. So the $30 plus she gets 20, it costs me 50. What is it worth for me to change my own oil? Well, it's like probably $300, $400, $500 for me to change my oil. Or I can pay $50 to have my 19-year-old take it, and then, $20 to her and $30 to whoever to change the oil. So that's the mindset that I want you to have, and understand that that's the mindset that we take at Turnkey Coach. Our goal, now that we have an excellent full service online coaching platform, turnkey system, automated metrics, is now is applying Andrew's lean manufacturing, so that you can do what you do best, which is just coach, and your clients can do what they do best, which is lift and video themselves and just upload it. And that the technology just fades into the background and becomes the bridge. It's the telephone or whatever between the bridge of communication between the client and the coach. So the client gets to train and upload videos, the coach gets to coach. And anything beyond that you're doing is something you can look to cut. And so you've got options there. You've got your teenage kids and nieces and nephews and people from church who can work for cheap. You can hire a housekeeper like we do that comes in just once a week. You can go online to Upwork or Fiverr and pay a cheap $1 per hour for something like, for Excel spreadsheets or for presentation, something that's going to just set you apart that would take you 10 or 12 or 15 hours to do. They can do it in an hour and for, $28. And think about those things. So that quadrant 2 of it is urgent, but it's not that important, you can hire out and delegate and automate. And then actually, as we get into quadrant 3, there are things that you are going to have to do that are both urgent and important. And as the business grows, though, you can also hire those things out as well. Just understand they're going to be more expensive because when they are both urgent and important, they often require a skill set that is something that's not going to be $12 an hour anymore. You're going to have to pay $35 an hour or $50 an hour or something like that. And that may be worth your time too. I mean, if you're charging $100 an hour for coaching, or you're making $100 an hour, or on Turnkey Coach, $200 or $300 an hour or whatever, then you should hire that out as well. And most people will be happy to get that, happy to get $100 an hour for that job. And so, but I would start with quadrant, get rid of quadrant 1, not urgent, not important, get rid of the video games and the porn and the Netflix, unless it's like, something that's really good and interesting and something you can do with your family and is edifying to you and whatnot. Get rid of that, just time wasters, like doom scrolling through social media. Get into quadrant 2 and delegate that out at a cheap rate, and you'll be much happier and you'll be much freer, and you get to focus on the stuff that really matters. So there you go. It's another Friday episode of the Barbell Logic Podcast, the Coaching Success Series. Hopefully my voice is a little better by next week, and I'll see you guys next Friday.